Thanks for tuning in to more NFL talk on the Our Lads Football Network as we talk New England Patriots football on Pat's Probe with Evan Lazar of CLNSmedia.com on the CLNS Media Network. So, how's it going, Evan?
It's going well. How are you doing,
I'm
Greg?
doing all right. And I am glad that we get an opportunity to talk about an exciting football game for a change. Even though I know the Patriot fans will take a boring win over an exciting loss any day. Uh, who knows? Maybe they wouldn't the way that they've reacted this season, but it was a fun game. I'll be honest. I think out of all the games that I've seen this season, this might have been the best game of the entire NFL season.
It was a great game, and I would just say the loudest that I've heard Gillette Stadium in a long, long, long time was the Kendrick Bourne 75-yard touchdown. I think that was the
Where'd that come from?
loudest. Yeah, just the rocking of the stadium. We haven't felt the press box shake in that vein since maybe 2018. There was probably a time in 2019 where Brady got it to shake like that too, but it's been a couple of years since everybody was so just over the top elated about a play happening on the field by the Patriots offense.
And it's something because look, when you have Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy was brought in here for a reason, not to rebuild, to take the next step, and then you get
Right.
one of these games, it's kind of easy for us to look and understand. Well, Dallas winning the game because maybe it's because they are at a different level of where they are looking and trying to
Yeah.
be. Patriots are trying to. That was almost like a shortcut. Like, can we shortcut our way to winning this game and advancing quicker? But even though they lost, I don't think, to tell you the truth, it matters. I don't think not that game. I think that game was one of those games that even though the Patriots lost, they definitely did advance a lot further than they did when they beat Houston.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. And I think a lot of Patriots fans look, this is Boston. And Greg, as you know, moral victories and silver linings after losses in New England, those don't go over too well with the fan base. They want results and they want W's. And we're so used to winning games here in Patriot land that it's difficult to take the moral victories. But when you have a young quarterback and a rookie QB, and you have an off season of additions, moves, free agent signings. So you have a young QB in his first handful of starts in the NFL. You have a bunch of new faces, guys that are going to play critical roles for you on offense and defense this year and moving forward, new to the team. So we knew that this was going to be a slow buildup, right? We knew that this was going to take some time. And the solace that you can come away with from this game is that this is the best the Patriots offense has looked since the Brady era. An offense that hit 4 explosive passing plays, 2 more explosive running plays, getting 6 20-plus yard gains in one game. And for the first time since the Brady era, you have an offense now that you can see some of the pieces starting to come together. In Dallas, in this game, from a passing perspective, they played cover one, man-to-man coverage 76% of the time. They got into the Patriots' faces. They played man-to-man across the board with a single high safety, and they said, we don't think that you can beat us on the outside. And the Patriots averaged nearly 11 yards per attempt throwing the football and beat them quite a few times against man-to-man coverage. It wasn't perfect. The offensive line certainly is still a major concern moving forward. Randy Gregory dominated stretches of this game and really threw off the Patriots offense in the middle quarters with his pass rushing ability. But offensively, and this is what I wrote today in my film review, you see the pieces and you see the chemistry brewing and you kind of see it all coming together a little bit. And the Patriots brought Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, and Jonnu Smith in this offseason to beat man-to-man coverage so that teams couldn't just sit in man-to-man and take away all the receivers for the Patriots and really stymie their passing attack. And at least against Dallas, 3 out of 4 of those guys created downfield plays. Hunter Henry catches a touchdown. Kendrick Bourne obviously caught a touchdown. And Nelson Aguilar caught a 27-yard pass. Now, he dropped the throw in overtime, and that one stings. But you saw those guys beating man to man. You saw Mac delivering the football down the field. Certainly the most aggressive, in a good way, that Mac Jones has been in his rookie season so far. So the pieces on offense, if they can get the offensive line figured out, you're starting to see the puzzle form a little bit here, and you're starting to see Mac Jones become more aggressive.
Yeah, because once again, it's all about the maturation and development of Mac Jones more than anything.
Right.
That is what is going to be important for the Patriots as a whole. And his numbers really were very solid because when you are completing only 15 passes, but you're able to complete 71% of those, it's over 200 yards. And
Right.
yeah, a lot of it came on that big throw, but look, that's part of it, and that's part of the game. And when they needed to come up with a big play, the throw was on the mark, and it should just give Patriot fans, any of the ones that were doubters, even that much more faith in the fact that they've got the right guy.
Yeah, and this Dallas defense came into this game as one of the hotter defenses in the league. Last week against the Giants, they played extremely well. They were turning teams over at an extremely high rate. And I know Mac had the pick six, so they did get one turnover on him, but they were averaging over 2.5 turnovers a game. The pick six was a fluky play. It wasn't like he threw it like right to Trayvon Diggs
Sure.
or something like that.
It wasn't a good throw, but it was fluky. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it wasn't a good throw, but I would also argue that it was at least catchable for Kendrick Bourne,
Sure.
and Kendrick Bourne probably it was a fluky play that was unlucky that it bounced off Bourne's hands and right into Trayvon Diggs's lap. That was one of the easiest interceptions that Diggs has had this year, just in terms of it falling right to him. So I think that there are a lot of really good elements for the Patriots offense. They ran the ball more effectively. They broke off some big runs with Damian Harris in this game, and the run blocking I thought was the best that it's looked all year long. So they have a lot of good things working on offense and a lot of chemistry. And when we go over some of the plays that I sent you, you just see anticipation throws and trust in his receivers that Mac Jones is developing, specifically with Hunter Henry, but I would also say with Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne as well, to a degree, where he knows where the guy is going to be, and he's throwing the ball to spots down the field, knowing that his receivers are going to go ahead and kind of trusting those guys to make a play on it, right? And that's something that I think is really beneficial in terms of long-term progression and development. That's a really good sign of future success. Now, defensively, to me, it is what it is on the defense side of the ball. Stephon Gilmore is not walking through the door, so they're not going to be a dominant defense this year. They're not going to be a team that's able to control games with their defense. And the Cowboys had a lot of yards in this game, almost 600 total yards of offense. There was a ton of open receivers all game long. The pass rush really struggled to that balancing act between rushing Dak but not being too aggressive against the mobile quarterback. I think the Patriots sometimes coach themselves into pretzels against mobile QBs, in that essence that you have to be aggressive, but they also want you to contain because they don't want the Dak to extend plays with his legs. But because they're so caught up in containing, there was no pressure on the quarterback for 4 quarters, and Dak was able to just sit back there and pick apart the coverage down the field. So there were some instances where the Patriots had pretty good initial coverage on the play, but when you ask these guys to cover Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Dalton Schultz for 4 or 5 seconds at a time, eventually something is going to break down and someone is going to break open, and that's what happened a lot with the Patriots defense. But this Patriots defense is I would call it average. It's good, not great. And I think that's kind of where they're at. Offensively, I feel more optimistic that the arrow is pointing upwards and they can continue to get better. Defensively, I think they kind of are what they are.
And let's keep in mind too, offensively, they still need more weapons. If they're going to be, and it all depends on what kind of team that they want to be.
Yeah.
Because the receiving part of it, it's just still not there. Wide receivers.
Yeah, it feels like they're missing they're missing that blue chip game breaker, right? They're missing their, and look, these guys don't grow on trees, so
No,
it's easy for us to sit here and say, but they're missing their Devontae Adams, they're missing their Tyreek Hill, they're missing their DK Metcalf, they're missing that one guy that's just has 2 or 3 plays a game where he's uncoverable,
but
right?
they also don't even have the Wes Welker yet. So not
Yeah,
only do they don't have either, and because they don't have
yeah,
either, and the two tight end situation hasn't worked out yet. We haven't seen this become what we thought it was going to be. I mean, why did you sign both of these guys if you're not going to exploit them in the way
yeah.
that everybody thought that you were? So there's something, but
Johnny Smith has not worked out. That one has been weird from the jump. It felt like he had a really good training camp and he looked very, very good over the summer, but he is not a traditional tight end, right? He's not a traditional wide tight end like a Rob Gronkowski or like a Hunter Henry, right? Those guys are traditional downfield route runners that run good routes, that get open against man coverage. Jonnu is his own thing. He's kind of a Swiss Army knife. And the player that I look at that I hope that the Patriots eventually find with a guy like Jonnu is someone like Cordero Patterson, who the Falcons have now gotten a ton out of at the running back position. But before he went to Atlanta, the Patriots were playing Cordero Patterson as a pseudo running back well before the Falcons started doing it, and using him out of the backfield and using him in motion and getting him open down the field on pick plays or rub routes or different types of schematic wrinkles that they could use just to get him opportunities to run with the football in his hands.
why didn't that relationship work out?
The Cordell Patterson one, I mean, look, he wasn't an all pro player for the Patriots. He wasn't worth
Yeah,
$13 million on the same level as Johnny Smith, but that worked out extremely well just in terms of what they thought they were going to get out of Cordell Patterson on offense and what they ended up getting. The expectation was much better than what the expectation was in terms of what they were going to get offensively. But the main thing that I used CP as a comparison for Jonnu is because Patterson's the type of guy that if you can get him the football while he's in motion
yep.
and get him into space with the ball in his hands, he is as dangerous of a ball carrier as anyone in the NFL. And I feel like Johnny is in a similar vein, a big guy that can really rumble once he gets going. But the problem is that he's not the player that, okay, I got a guy in front of me, man-to-man coverage, I'm going to shake him off with a nice route and get open and gain 11 yards. That's Hunter Henry's game. That's not Johnny Smith's game. So I think the creativity and the scheming for Josh McDaniels really needs to come with Johnny Smith. They need to figure out ways to get him free and get him loose.
Well, I think this week is the week because the one thing that the Jets have been exploited on the last couple of weeks has been that player out of the backfield.
Yeah.
That has killed them the last couple of opponents. So I could see that is whether it's Jonnu Smith. See, that's the thing. If it's not Jonnu Smith, I mean, who's it going to be? Is it going to be Stevenson? I mean, it's got to be somebody.
Ramondre Stevenson. The good news is that Ramondre Stevenson is starting to come on here a little bit in the passing game, which hopefully means that Brandon Bolden is going to be on come here soon. So the hope is that they're going to start to trust Ramondre more and more and more, so that a guy like Brandon Bolden plays less, right? And you really go to the rookie and passing situations. He got 2 passes against Dallas, one in the flat, and he got one-on-one in space with Leighton Vander Esch and was able to shake him for a nice gain, 13 yards, and then he hit the seam throw for 22 yards later on, so on the same drives. Stevenson's coming along a little bit, and you hope that he's the guy moving forward instead of Brandon Bolden.
And maybe this is the week. Maybe this is the perfect week. Now that he's starting to project the right way, that they can use him the way that I believe they're probably going to need to use one of these players against the Jets defense. So back to the Patriot defense against Prescott. Now that they've played the game and knowing how it did not work, if they were playing the Cowboys again this week, what does Belichick do differently?
So I think I'd point to 2 things. So that's a good question. The first thing is sometimes both of them I feel like are almost Belichick outsmarting himself or being too smart for his own good. And the first one, I mentioned earlier was the Patriots, when they play mobile quarterbacks, they do what they call a mush rush, which means they're going to push the pocket, they're going to contain their gaps, and they're going to stay in their rush lanes, and they're not going to allow the quarterback out of the pocket, right? They're going to force these mobile guys, whether it's Dak Prescott or it's Lamar Jackson or whoever it is, to beat them from inside the pocket. Now, Dak has developed to the point where he is as good inside the pocket as he is outside the pocket. And this is why the Patriots have had all sorts of problems with guys like Dak or Deshaun Watson, for example, because Watson can beat you from the pocket just as easily as he can beat you on the move, too. So they have these mush rush situations where they're so concerned about gap integrity in rush lanes and not allowing Dak out of the pocket that he just sits back there. He just sits back there, and he sits back there some more, and eventually guys come open. So, and then the outsmarting himself part comes in when the Patriots see that for the first half, and they see that Dak is sitting back there and has all day. So in the second half, they start blitzing him. And when you face a guy like Prescott, who's been great against the blitz all year long, you start pulling guys out of coverage, and he knows exactly where to go with the football, right? You start firing guys up at the line of scrimmage, and he's also mobile enough that if you blitz, that he can get out of the blitz just by scrambling to his right, and then you're in trouble. So I think what happened was they panicked. I would say in the second half when the rush wasn't getting home and Prescott had all day to throw and they got almost too aggressive for their own good. And the other thing I would just mention is that Belichick threw the kitchen sink at Dak Prescott, right? He played single high, he played man-to-man, he played two high, he played zone, he blitzed, he covered, 7-8 guys in coverage with 3 or 4 man rushes. They did absolutely everything in the Belichick Rolodex to see if something would work against Dak. And sometimes throwing the kitchen sink and overcomplicating it, you're actually not doing anything, right? Sure. You're trying to be so creative and so confusing that you end up actually doing nothing in return. And it felt like if the Patriots had just trusted their guys in man-to-man coverage and sat back and one robber or 2-man or something like that and played that consistently well, that maybe they would have had more luck than one play we're doing this, the next play we're doing that. And I think that they got a little panicky and they started trying to just, he's beating us doing everything. We're just going to keep throwing the kitchen sink and try to confuse him and try to rattle him. And Dak is just well beyond that in his development at this point.
All right. Because the Patriots had no sacks and only 2 tackles for loss in the game.
Yeah.
That is not going to get it done.
Yeah.
When you're playing a team as talented as the Dallas Cowboys. It also looked like Hightower was exposed a little bit in coverage too.
Yeah, that's not necessarily new. He's not known for being a great coverage guy. He's a run defender, pass rusher, blitz him up the A-gap sort of guy.
Nothing you could do about that, yeah.
Yeah, the Patriots linebackers, look, they get a lot of flack in New England for being slow at the linebacker level. But in reality, I think Belichick looks at it differently, and he sees – if I got a cover, then I'm just going to put a safety in the box and I'm going to play Kyle Duggar or Adrian Phillips as a quote unquote linebacker and get more speed there. So instead of drafting a 225, 230 pound linebacker, I'm just going to go out and I'll mix and match it with the personnel of the offense. If they're in run sets, if it's first down, I'll put my 260 pound linebackers on the field. If it's 3rd and 8, I'll put my dime package out there and get faster guys on the field. So I understand Belichick's philosophies with the linebackers, but on first down, it does tend to get them exposed sometimes, throwing guys out of the backfield, tight ends, things like that.
All right, back to offense and a couple of things before we start looking at the film. And again, no Shaq Mason. I mean, you got two of your top linemen still out. Brown on IR. When is Brown coming back?
He's due to come back after the Jets game, but I will believe it when I see it because they told us for weeks before he went on injured reserve. I kept on hearing he's coming back. He's coming back. They try to ramp it back up with him out at practice. Then he goes on injured reserve. Probably some sort of setback must have happened. He goes on injured reserve. So I will believe that Trent Brown is returning to the Patriots this season when I see it.
I know that feeling.
Yeah.
And then also on top of the fact that Mac Jones doesn't have the greatest weapons, the greatest arsenal, he didn't get a lot of help in pass protection either this particular week. Under
Yeah.
pressure a lot. Of course, he had the big the big turnover. What was that? The one where what was it? Juiced was it?
Yeah, so Cajuste got ragdolled by
Gregory.
Isaiah Wynn and Cajuste both got dominated by Randy Gregory on 2 sacks. One of them was a strip sack, and the other one was on third down. So two pivotal plays in this game. And Gregory sacked him on the strip sack in 2.45 seconds, and he sacked him on the second one in 2.5 seconds. So
Wow.
absolutely no shot, right, to let anything develop down the field and make a throw before Gregory gets home. So you look at these linemen and you see some of the breakdowns that they do. I thought they're, like I mentioned earlier, their run blocking was much better in this game. They averaged
Yeah.
over 5 yards per carry with their running backs. Damian Harris had a huge game. He was up over 6 yards per carry for most of the game on Sunday. But then on 3rd and 1, they can't pick up the yard with Brandon Bolden, and then they have some breakdowns in pass protection that lead to some a turnover that lead to a sack on third down. These are the types of plays that you look at those middle innings, the second and the third quarter of this game. The Patriots had 5 straight bad drives, right? 6 straight if you include the kneel down before the half. They had the strip sack, they had three punts, and then the kneel out. So these types of drives in the middle of this game in the second and third quarter was the reason why the defense was on the field for so many plays. Because I thought the defense, as many yards as they ended up giving up, if you look at the drive charts, it really isn't until the fourth quarter and overtime that the dam started to break defensively. And you just have to think at that point they're on the field for
Sure.
65, 70 plus plays. They ended up finishing with 82 plays on offense. If you add the penalties called against Dallas, it was 92 plays
Wow.
for the Cowboys. And those plays that get penalties, they still count in terms of the reps for the players, right?
Sure.
We'd cancel them out because they're penalties,
Yeah.
but they're still out there running
That's
around like
right.
crazy for 10 extra plays. So 92 plays for the Cowboys offense in this game. I don't care if you're the 85 Bears. If you're out there for 92 plays by the fourth quarter and certainly by overtime, you're going to start to be fatigued and slow down out there.
What was the play? The 3rd and 1 with Bolden.
Yeah, so they ran it with around the 50-yard line, 3rd and 1, Brandon Bolden, and Jacoby Myers and the entire right side got caved in and completely whooped, and Brandon Bolden got tackled for a 1-yard loss. And this feeds into the conversation that I think a lot of people are having, and I have something coming out on Wednesday about Bill Belichick becoming the most conservative decision maker in the entire NFL. Literally 32nd in terms of when the math tells you to go for it and how often the Patriots are actually going for it on fourth down. So he had a couple of doozies on Sunday night where 4th and 1 from the 50, 4th and 2 from the 46, middle of the field position, and he's punting instead of going for it. And then before the half, they kneel it out. They have a minute 30 seconds left, 14-10 lead. Then they are going to get the ball to start the second half as well at the beginning of the third quarter. So you let Mac Jones go down the field, kick a field goal there, maybe get another touchdown, then you score coming out of the half as well. Game's over, right? That's a 24-10, 28-10 lead right there for the Patriots if they put it all together. And Bill kneels on it. And then you look at some of the fourth downs in the second half. The fourth down in overtime, they have 4th and 3 from their own 46. They haven't stopped Dak Prescott in the Cowboys offense all game long, and he punts it back to Dak Prescott for a net of 30 yards in field position. So the frustration, I think, for a lot of people, if you're frustrated with Bill, the coach, from a schematic perspective, then you're looking in the wrong place, because he's still as good as ever in
Sure.
my mind. The systems are still sound. The techniques, he's great at coaching them up. He plays a very good system in a fundamentally sound football team for the most part. But the problems that I see with him is situationally with the decision making, and in the fact that they just have no urgency. They're not aggressive. They play extremely conservatively, and they're trying. It's classic loss aversion, right? They're trying not to lose the game. Instead of playing the game aggressively and trying to win the football game, they are trying to avoid losing. And when you try to avoid to lose, especially with a young team that's still coming together, you're going to be 2-4.
Well, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago about how this is looking more and more like the way Bill Belichick ran the team in the early stages with Tom Brady.
Yeah.
How he was very conservative, and how at one point, maybe it was year 2, 3, 4, whatever, at one point everything changed
Yeah.
180, and he was Mr. Aggressive, and everything he was doing, it was like, wow. I mean, I would never have expected, because I remember, I don't know, I can't recall when it was. It might have been, wasn't there some weird Indianapolis game?
Yes. So this is the lead into my story on
Oh,
Wednesday.
really?
In
Okay.
2009, week 10, 2009, I know all these facts off the top of my head, of course. Week 10, 2009, the Patriots had a 4th and 2 from their own 28-yard line, and they were holding a 6-point lead against Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. And this was peak Indy, right? Like best offense in the NFL, Indianapolis, MVP quarterback, the whole 9 yards, Hall of Fame quarterback, I should say. And Bill goes for it on 4th and 2 from the 28, and they get stopped. Kevin Falk gets tackled in the flat and gets pushed out of bounds, comes up 1 yard short, doesn't make the line to gain. And then Peyton Manning only has 28, 29 yards to go for the game winning touchdown. And looking back on after the game, Bill got roasted, absolutely roasted for going for it on 4th down. But he said that he knew that if they punted the ball back to Peyton Manning, that the results would have been the same, that they thought that the defense had done as much as it possibly could have to stop Peyton that day. And Peyton had gotten hot late in the game, just like Dak did on Sunday. And they decided to go for it. And now when you look at the rest of the league, the takeover for the analytics people and the math people, so many teams are going for it in that instance now, right?
It's
Everybody's
crazy.
going for it. Like last night on Monday night with Buffalo going for it on 4th and 1.
Yeah.
Everyone is going for it now, and they're being more aggressive. But Bill was going for it before it was cool. Now that it's cool to go for it, Bill is the conservative guy.
Yeah.
So this started the 09 Colts game. It didn't start right away right after that. This started in 2012 when Josh McDaniels came back to be the offensive coordinator for the Patriots again. And at that point, from 2012 on, we have seen a slow downward trend of Bill going for it in 4th down, to the point where this year they are 32nd in the league in terms of what the math tells you to do versus what they're actually doing. They've faced 41 third downs, and they've gone for it just 3 times in the first 6 games of the season. And a couple of those were late, no choice but to go for it type of situation. So
What were they? 4th down and what?
The 1-3 that they went for it, all 4th and manageable type of situations. But so were the ones on Sunday against Dallas. And what I wrote after the game, and what I keep coming back to with these decisions against the Cowboys, is that the Patriots are no longer the favorites, right? They are no longer the juggernaut team. They are no longer the Tom Brady dynasty Patriots. So they're now the underdogs. And as you know, Greg, from looking at it from that perspective, when you came into New England to play Tom Brady and you were in a game with Brady late in the game, kicking field goals, punting it back to Brady,
Yeah.
giving him any time on the clock, all these things were sacrilege. And we used to belly laugh and make fun of all the opponents that would come into Foxborough, play the Patriots tough for 3.5 quarters, and then, piss down their legs, so to speak, right? And we used to laugh at all of them. Oh my God, they punt the ball. Instead of going for it on 4th and 3, they punted it back to Brady, and he went right down the field and won the game. What idiots, right?
Yeah.
That's what we used to say, all these things. The Patriots have become the idiots. The Patriots have become the ones that have the underdog team, that are battling it out with the number 1 seed in the NFC and the Dallas Cowboys. And instead of playing it aggressive and going for the win in overtime or at the end of the game in regulation, so many different instances where they could have went for the jugular for Dallas's jugular, and they let him off the hook. And that, I think, is probably the most frustrating thing as a Patriots fan. It's same with the Tampa Bay game, right? Two instances where you were right there. You had him on the ropes, and you let him off.
Well, I would still not look. I understand what you're saying as far as where the level has dipped, but I don't know. I get the feeling maybe at some point, especially since it's such now big news, I think at some point we're gonna start seeing them take some chances.
I
don't know
really
when it's
think
gonna
that,
be. Maybe it'll be
yeah,
against teams like the Jets,
right.
but it's gonna happen.
I really think that I think Belichick enjoys the fact that he's doing something that's not trendy, right? He's going
Sure.
against the trend. And earlier in the game, and Josh McDaniels pointed this out when we spoke to him today, earlier in the game, Dallas went for a 4th and 1 from about the 45 yard line, and they didn't get it. And the Patriots got the ball back on a short field and scored a touchdown to start the game. It actually might have been like the 30 yard line. It was well in their own territory. And they went for the 4th and 1. The Patriots stuffed them, and they gave them the short field, and they scored the touchdown to start the game. And McDaniel said, "See, that's what could happen on the flip side." Or last night with Buffalo, that's what could happen on the flip side of these decisions. But Dallas knew that if they went for it on 4th and 1 and didn't get it, that they were still going to score 35 points.
Sure.
Right? They knew that they were still going to come back and score a ton of points. The Patriots cannot coach that way anymore. They can't coach like they used to. They have to be more aggressive.
Well, it's sort of like that's what happened with the Patriots. I mean, he always said Brady and the Bucks on Thursday night.
Yeah,
late in the game.
Yeah,
they went for it like on 4th and 5 or something like that at midfield, and of course, it's because you have Tom Brady.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's nice to have that guy. Trust me, we know
he's not around anymore. Yeah. So let's take a look at some of these clips now.
Sure.
And we're gonna start here with the touchdown. This is going to be the touchdown pass. And look, we've said it. Even though Henry scores the touchdown pass, there's only 3 receptions for the tight ends. That's not going to get it done with this offense. So let's go ahead and talk us through this.
Yeah, so the good news is I think you're seeing a lot in Hunter Henry over the last couple of weeks. I think he has now we're up to 3 straight games with a touchdown catch. So you're seeing from the high red zone, like on this play, or in the red zone inside the 20, that the Patriots are getting Hunter Henry opportunities to win down the field, and he's taking advantage of them. So you're also seeing the chemistry like in this play between Mack and Hunter Henry really come along and really get to the point where they seem to be building a trust with one another. So the Patriots are in 12 personnel. You have Hunter Henry to Mac Jones's left and Jonnu Smith to Mac Jones's right. And because they're in this 12 look, Dallas matches it with single high cover 1 man-to-man with just the 1 post safety in the middle of the field. So as they carry out the play action fake, what's going to happen is that in his drop, Mac Jones, you're going to see him look right to his right and hold that safety in the middle of the field, and then come back to the left and throw the seam pass to Hunter Henry. And when I say no look, I don't mean Patrick Mahomes no look across his body type of throw, but he doesn't actually ever confirm that Hunter Henry is winning on this route. He no looks it. He just basically says, I'm going to hold the safety, and then I'm going to drop the dime to Hunter Henry, and I'm going to trust my tight end to go ahead and win this rep. And that's exactly what happens. Henry beats Malik Hooker. Mac just kind of looks off the safety and then goes right to Hunter Henry and all in one motion and drops it into the perfect spot, and the Patriots get a touchdown. So if you're a young quarterback, if you're any quarterback, you're not making this throw to Hunter Henry unless you trust your guy.
Yes.
Right. And by holding that safety in the middle of the field, it causes the safety to be late, helping over the top of the route, and the ball beats the safety to the spot. So if you're Mac and you and Hunter Henry are just kind of like, we'll see, but I'm not really too confident in them yet, yet you're not making that blind throw there to him up the seam. So that to me shows chemistry. And obviously, it's great that the Patriots have a guy in the red zone that can win a one-on-one, that can just go out there and beat somebody in man coverage.
And look, it's something we see from veteran quarterbacks as well. And sometimes even the elite quarterbacks can just get that. But yeah, for a young quarterback, that's like one of the very first things that you always want to see in their maturation process is that they are going to trust their receiver to get open. And it's not even just that. Sometimes it's even, okay, I know my receiver is covered. And instead of running around and trying to create something or throwing the ball out of bounds, whatever the case, or putting the ball in some other bad spot, I'm going to trust that maybe my wide receiver can win the battle, the one-on-one battle.
Right.
And that's sometimes that it's another thing that rookie quarterbacks try not to do very much, especially if they're worried about the interception. And sometimes it has to do with the fact that you don't have the talent. And I know that might be the case with the Patriots. I'm not sure Mac Jones wants to throw the ball up for grabs with any of their one-on-one wide receivers. Maybe Nelson Aguilar deserves a shot once in a while. But in this situation, it was perfect because it wasn't even like it wasn't anything more than a fraction of a second look that Jones gave the safety. It was extremely fast.
Yeah, so really in rhythm type of throw from Mac, and this is another one on the next play here. You just mentioned Nelson Aguilar, and the point that of pulling these three plays in particular is that these are the three bigger free agent besides Jonnu. These are 3 out of the 4 free agent additions getting man-to-man coverage opportunities and going out there and getting open for the quarterback and the quarterback delivering the football. So when the Patriots signed all these guys in free agency in March, they hoped that it would eventually start to look like this, right? Once you got onto the field. So at the top of the screen, Nelson Aguilar has got man-to-man again. They have the single high safety in the middle of the field, and he's going to run what's called a burst corner route. So the Patriots love crossing routes, right? They've always loved crossing routes. So what Aguilar is going to do is he's going to stem inside initially off the line of scrimmage like he's running a crossing route, and then he's going to break outside on the corner pattern. So Mac knows, once again, I got the safety in the middle of the field. I got man-to-man coverage on the outside. The safety is not going to be a factor over the top because I'm going to throw this on the sideline, and my guy is going to go out there and just win the one-on-one, and I'm going to trust him to do it. So as we roll the play, the Cowboys end up bringing this blitz up the middle, and it gets home. They get pressure on Mac Jones here, and he's got it. This is a longer developing route, so he's got to give Aguilar a couple of seconds here to get into this break. So he's got to hold the football. So they actually get home, and again, he stares down that safety to hold the safety in the middle of the field, and off his back foot with pressure in his face, just gets enough on it to drop it in the bucket and complete it for 27 yards. So it's going to flip over, I think, to the end zone angle, and you're going to see the pressure in Mac's face, him look off the safety, and then just trust it, right? It's not like he's seeing Aguilar come open. This is an anticipation. I can't say that word today. Anticipation throw where Aguilar is coming out of his break as Mac is releasing the football, and he's just going to put it up there in a spot that only his guy can catch it. And those are the types of throws that you look at from this tape that just get you excited about where this offense could be heading, because if Mac is starting to let it fly and starting to trust his guys to win down the field like he would with Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle or Jordan Mechie or those guys at Alabama, if he's going to get to that point with some of these receivers, then the Patriots passing offense is going to become a lot more explosive. I was looking back and watching that week 2 matchup against the Jets, and that was probably although he turned the ball over more against New Orleans the following week, for my money, that was probably Mac's worst game of the year because he was gun shy. He wasn't willing to take some of these chances. Now you're seeing him actually pull the trigger and hit some of these downfield throws, which is really encouraging.
And the final play is going to be the big one, the big touchdown.
It's the touchdown. So there's a couple of things that are interesting about this play. I heard guys like Drew Brees, Chris Sims after the game talking about this play and basically saying that Mac got lucky that on this throw, and that he probably shouldn't have thrown this ball, and because it did get dicey with that safety coming over the top, and it was close. But I actually think I understand his process here and what he's going for. So first and foremost, they show him these two high safeties at the top of the screen to start the snap. The safeties are going to rotate in a weak side rotation where the safety at the bottom of the screen on the right hash or left hash, if you're looking at the quarterback, he's going to rotate into the box, and then the safety on the far hash is going to rotate into the middle of the field. So they go from too high pre-snap, they change it up, they rotate the safeties. The bottom of the screen, you have Kendrick Bourne on a little out and up double move against Trevon Diggs. And he's going to beat Trevon Diggs on the double move and get up the field. Now, that safety ranging over the top, his initial angle to the football when he opens his hips and turns and runs, he thinks Mac Jones is going to throw this ball outside the numbers because you have a vertical route and you have a guy separating over the top on the vertical. So he fully expects Mac Jones to try to drop this ball into the boundary or into the sideline. Instead, what Mac Jones is going to do is he's actually going to throw it on a line inside the safety, and that allows Kendrick Bourne to undercut it, right, to cut across the face of the safety and get behind the defense for a touchdown. So Mac's ball placement here, although it looks like the ball is a little bit inaccurate because maybe you would want this to be thrown into the boundary, I actually think he threw it here on purpose because he saw this safety coming over the top, and he saw the way the angle that the safety was taking to Kendrick Bourne, and he said, oh, this guy's going to help into the boundary. So I'm going to actually throw it inside and trust my guy in Kendrick Bourne that he's going to cut across and make this catch. And that's exactly what happened. So he, in a lot of ways with his ball placement, makes that safety look silly, right?
Absolutely.
That safety looks out of position there.
And to me, what happened on this play was not just a really good pass by Mac Jones, a terrible play by Dallas' safety.
Yeah.
That should have been a 25-yard pass. And that's it. That was again, understanding the game as the defender, you cannot allow that play to happen.
Yeah, they both, Trevon Diggs and the deep safety, both go for the football, right? And so they both try to go for the interception, try to go for their version of the jugular, and end the game right there with another pick after the pick six from Mac Jones on the play before it. And Mac, I thought that he put the ball in that spot on purpose and knew that Kendrick Bourne was going to go make a play. And those are three instances, 2 touchdowns, another downfield throw to Nelson Aguilar, where you're seeing Mac trust his guys to just go out there and beat the coverage and make a aggressive play on the ball in the air. And all three of them came through with it.
And great point too with Diggs and him going for it, because that is exactly what also happens on the play, is that not only does the safety put himself in a position to allow Bourne to catch it and get by him, but Diggs is undercutting the receiver looking for the interception when he shouldn't be doing that either. It's like both players totally screwed up the play at the same time. But this is also the Dallas defense right now. The Dallas Cowboys mantra on defense right now is takeaways. How many takeaways can we get? Because really, without the takeaways, they're not really a high level defense, especially with their top sack guy out. They need the takeaways. So they're going to live and die with the takeaways. But even though that's the case, you have to know the game. You have to know the situation. That is not the time for an attempted takeaway.
Yeah, it looked extremely similar to the touchdown that the Patriots gave up against Houston on the right sideline, where J.C. Jackson and Devin McCourty both go for the interception, and the Texans receiver ends up coming up with it and running for a 67-yard touchdown. Almost an identical play, just on the other sideline and a little bit of a different type of route. So you look at these guys like Trevon Diggs, guys like J.C. Jackson, they're great playmakers in the secondary, and Diggs had the pick six. JC had 4 pass breakups in this game. So both those guys really are effective on the ball cornerbacks, but they are also prone to falling into ball hawking tendencies where they just are going for picks sometimes, and they're just trying to go for the turnover. And you look at a guy for example, as we've seen up here in New England a lot, Stephon Gilmore did not necessarily have the interception numbers that a guy like J.C. Jackson had during his time here. But Stephon Gilmore went out and locked down receivers for 4 straight quarters.
Yeah.
Whereas J.C. gives up a few plays here, gives up a few plays there, and then takes one back with an interception, and that kind of evens out his day. Right. And I feel like Trevon Diggs is the exact same type of player
Yep.
as J.C. Jackson from that standpoint, that Diggs has a pick six, but he also gives up a touchdown. And that's a perfect summation of those types of players.
Which, again, I mean, that's why things like Pro Bowl is so, I hate the Pro Bowl, because all they care about, especially for defensive backs, is how many interceptions do you have.
Right.
It's like Diggs. Yes, it's nice that Diggs is coming up with all these big plays, but how many plays is he giving up? There are other cornerbacks like that we've seen over the years that do this a lot. And that just makes you, I mean, that's a good player, but that does not make you an elite level, nor should it give you the opportunity to be called Defensive Player of the Year, because it's just not it. Anybody can gamble. It doesn't mean that anybody can make the plays that Diggs is playing, but anybody can gamble. The Cowboys are letting the players gamble. That's just the way their defense is right now. But it shows you that could have cost them. That right there actually should have cost them the football game.
Yeah, and it's funny because on his pick six, Kendrick Bourne beats him on the route. Right.
Yes.
The initial route he gets beat on, and he gets lucky with the tip. So I'm not trying to take away from anything from Diggs. He's had a great year.
Yes.
He's a really, really good young player. But these types of we've seen it with J.C. Jackson. Before J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel was the same style of cornerback, where these guys, and you ask J.C., he says, I'm a ball hawk. You know, I'm out there ball hawking. That's what I do. And that's all well and good, but the consistency of a guy like Gilmore, or the consistency of a guy like Revis, you know, those guys are on a different level because they mirror receivers for 4 quarters all game long. And maybe they don't have the interception numbers, but they also don't have the yards allowed and the touchdowns allowed either.
And look, it's great to have DBs like that, the ones that can make the plays, because how often do we see these DBs that either can't catch the ball, or they catch the ball and you can see, well, they look uncomfortable when they're returning the ball. And it's just it's such a help to have a guy in your defensive backfield that can be a playmaker like Diggs, that when he gets the ball, he can score every time he has. It's like Ed Reed. Nobody was like Ed Reed. I mean, Ed Reed, he could catch the ball 5 yards in the back of the end zone and go 105 yards. You were always, no matter where he had the ball on the field of play, he could score a touchdown. Those guys are very rare, and they're important to have on the team, and nobody's taking anything away from what Diggs has done this season. But you have to understand there's a lot more to playing defensive back than returning interceptions for touchdowns.
Yeah, certainly. But it's a tough blow for the Patriots to lose this game in the fashion that they lost it in, because this, I would say more so than the Bucs game, because remember, the Bucs game, the offense was only going to score 20 points even if that field goal goes through. This game, they scored 29. Mac throws a 75-yard touchdown. You know, they really started to open up the passing game a little bit more. 4 completions of over 20 yards in the air for Jones. If they had won this game, this was his coming out party, right? This was his, I went toe-to-toe with a 4-1 team, and I beat Dak Prescott in a primetime game, or 425, might as well have been primetime. And I not necessarily outplayed Dak, but I played well enough to win the football game. And he certainly did, but it just wasn't enough because of the defense, unfortunately.
No question. He would have been the story. Absolutely. Instead, it was Dak. But like we said at the very beginning, that's kind of where Dallas is right now, where New England is. And you just have to look at it as Dallas at this point in where they're trying to build their team, they kind of needed it more. You know, this is they're trying to win. They want to see if they can win a Super Bowl this year.
Right.
I mean, they probably won't, but they've got the ability to compete with these teams in the postseason. It's not where the Patriots are at this point.
Yeah. So, you look at the 2-4 record and you do wonder, the Patriots have a few more weeks here, probably to like week 10 or 11, especially with the 17 game season now, to still really try to keep themselves in it, right?
Absolutely.
But if this snowballs into 2-4, becomes 2-7 or 2-8, something, 3-9 or whatever, then at some point in time you do look at this team and you say, hey, if they have right now, they would be slated to pick 7th overall in the draft in April.
Yeah, that's
If they
not going to
haven't,
happen.
if they have another good pick, right? They had the 15th pick in the draft last year and they hit on Mac Jones, it looks like. If they have another top 15, 20 talent type of pick on their roster
Which they're
next
going to
year,
get. Yep.
right, whether it's a tackle or it's a number 1 corner or it's a number 1 wide receiver or whatever position they end up going with, that would probably be better in a lot of ways than them getting into the wild card round and losing. Now, I'm not a tanker. Like I don't want them to tank. That's not in anybody's best interest in my mind. But there is something to be said for the fact that if they go into next offseason with a host of draft picks, some more capital, and they're able to take some more swings at some of these other positions that they have to fill out, then this team in 2021 is really kind of the foundation being laid, and 2022 is sort of the year you really, really start to go for it.
And it's all about, again, you have to find the first thing. You got to find that quarterback.
Yeah.
And that is why I was talking to Ryan Dunleavy on our show before. I think, look, I said this when the Jets made the move to trade Darnold and go with Zach. And there were a lot of people wondering, even Ryan still thinks it was a financial decision.
Yeah.
Well, they'll get Zach now for 4 or 5 years under contract, and they don't have to get. I believe that's not the case. I believe they did it because they don't trust Sam Darnold, and they're going to try to go with another quarterback. My point being, that's not what Carolina thought.
Yeah.
Carolina believes in Sam Darnold.
Yeah.
After the first 2 or 3 weeks, I was asked by Ryan whether or not I changed my mind. And I said, no. I don't care what Sam looks like the first 2. I don't care. I know Sam Darnold. He's going to come back to earth, and he's flat out come back down to earth, especially without Christian McCaffrey. So if you're Carolina, you could have had Mac Jones.
Yeah.
And you could have already established that you've got your quarterback of the future. They don't have their quarterback. They could try to convince themselves they've got their quarterback, but they don't. Yeah. And they're going to end up going into 2022 with Sam Darnold again, thinking that maybe he's our guy. We still believe, and they're going to wind up by 2023 realizing they still need to get themselves a quarterback. The Patriots already know that they don't have to worry about that anymore, and that's a big issue.
It's funny too because Matt Rule coached Mac Jones down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, so he had a hands-on experience with Mac down there at the Senior Bowl as well. So, look, I understand why Mac Jones fell to 15th watching him play for the first 6 games of the season because he doesn't have the tools, right? He has decent tools, but we're not in Trevor Lawrence, Trey Lance, Justin Fields territory, Zach Wilson territory with the arm talent, right? The arm talent is average. So I understand from that perspective, but he's tough as nails. He's got great mental toughness, right? To throw the pick 6 and then come back and throw a 75-yard touchdown right on the very next play. That takes some guts. And he's deadly, deadly accurate down the field when he is clicking, right? When he's playing at where his potential is, he's been pretty much all year long deadly accurate, really. Even in games where he's struggled, he's been throwing the football down the field accurately. He's 7th right now in the league in completion percentage over expected. He's top 10 in adjusted completion percentage. So he's an extremely accurate passer. And you look at
that's huge in the NFL.
Yeah, and you look at the mental acumen, and you look at the mental toughness and the makeup of him as as a player and as a person, and you really start to buy all the way in. Even if he doesn't have the physical tools that some of these other guys have, I think he's going to end up having a longer career in the NFL than some of these other dudes just because of who he is as a person.
Yeah, look, I think it's really, we said this before, and nothing has changed. Nothing has happened to change, I'm sure, either of our minds that the Patriots have got the right guy in the right fit with the right team, and that's not an easy thing to accomplish. So next week it's the Jets, and as long as the Patriots do not play like they did against Houston, then that'll be a win, especially with the fact that Zach couldn't have looked any worse than he looked against the Patriots, because he hasn't. I mean, he's had his bad performances and bad throws, but the Patriot game was by far his worst. and we'll find out how it happens now in matchup number 2, which
Yeah,
it
I'm looking
probably won't
forward
be
to
pretty
it a
for the
little bit
Jets.
because I don't I fully expect Zach Wilson to play because he can't play any worse than he played the first time around,
Yes,
right?
true,
So
true.
I fully expect him to play a lot better and maybe them test the Patriots a little bit more into the second half of this game because Wilson shouldn't throw 3 interceptions in the first half of the game, right? So 4 interception the first 35 minutes if you count the one right at the beginning of
Yeah.
the second half too. So I'd highly doubt that that's going to happen again. So it should be interesting to see them get the Jets' best this time around and see how that looks.
And they're struggling big time in the beginning of the football games. It's a
Yeah,
big issue with the coordinator, and they've had an extra week to prepare.
right.
I expect to see something different.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's we're going to spread them out 5 wide or we're going to do a hurry up offense to start the game. I would be shocked if the Jets just come out there and run the same personnel and the same offense with the very first series. So
yeah,
I think we see it. Now, it doesn't mean that they're going to be successful, but I just expect that we're going to see something a little bit different. So we'll
sure.
see.
Yeah, yeah.
All
Should
right.
be interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's a Jet Patriot game. So even though they've been dominated by the Patriots for the past 20 years, nothing's changed even without Tom Brady. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is, but it's a good remedy for the Patriots after the loss to the Cowboys. Evan, appreciate it. And you'll be on Patriots Press Pass once again tomorrow or Thursday?
All week long.
All
Yeah.
week
We have the
long.
Patriots Beat podcast on Tuesday afternoon. So Wednesday, if you are listening to it, then it will be up on Patriots Press Pass. I'll be down there at Gillette Stadium. All sorts of stuff going on this week.
Appreciate it, Evan. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.